Welcome to my drapery emporium. My name is Mrs Nugent and I'm the proud proprietor of this establishment. My late husband and I opened this business together. We met at a tea dance. I was over here visiting family, well, we came every year. And the first thing I noticed about him was his suit. Oh, it was immaculate. And I soon learned that he'd made it himself. He was a tailor, I was a seamstress. Well, we hit it off straight away. He was a wonderful tailor, was my husband. Everyone called him Needles Nugent. Mind you, he was a terrible businessman, God rest his soul. He could tell the quality of cloth just by touching it, which was just as well really, because he was blind as a bat without his glasses. And like a lot of men in those days, he was very vain about wearing them in public. Fortunately, he didn't need to look at a bolt of cloth. All he had to do was touch it. He had a beautiful feel for material. When we first opened the store, I would look after the ladies and he the men. It was a unique business for its time, as it was all under one roof. We had a reservations book for fittings so that the sexes would never meet. We were very proper back then. That was before the Great War. My Needles was always a worrier, always worrying about appearances. I was a supporter of the suffragette movement back then, and he was worried that if people found out it would affect our business. Well, I reasoned that if I was fit enough to run a business, I was fit enough to vote in a public election. Well, that was Needles all over. Always very timid, always worrying. But he soon changed his tune when I showed him the accounts, and he could see with his own eyes, with his glasses on, that the suffragette pound was just as good as anybody else's. The suffragettes were very particular about their appearance and presented a fashionable and feminine image, in contrast to those awful cartoon depictions of them in some publications. Women who sold the Suffragettes' weekly newspaper were requested to dress themselves in their smartest clothes. The suffragette colour scheme was devised in 1908 by Emmeline Pethick Lawrence, a co-editor of the Votes for Women newspaper. And the colours were an early triumph for fashion branding. Suffragettes wore purple for loyalty and dignity, white for purity, and green for hope. Members were encouraged to wear their colours as a duty and a privilege. I still wear mine to this very day. Even though I was granted the vote in 1918 because I was over 30 and I met certain property qualifications, I still believe in 1921 that all women need and deserve electoral equality with men. In our shop, I sold suffragette tricolour striped ribbons for hats and belts and rosettes. But my biggest seller was suffragette coloured underwear, which must have come as something of a shock to some unsuspecting husbands, although it did lead me to believe that many husbands never saw the wives in their underwear. When our female customers had left the shop, we'd remove all the purple, white and green for fear of alienating our male customers coming in next. That was just the time we were living in. When the Great War began, all suffragette campaigns were suspended. My Needles was exempt from serving in the war effort, not just because of his bad eyesight, but he was too old and he had flat feet. So we were spared that horror show. We'd no children, so we were spared that anxiety too. I never wanted children. I had my Needles, he had me, and we had our business. I felt like the luckiest woman on earth. We managed to keep the business going by Needles making tailored uniforms for the soldiers. The colour of choice for women changed from purple, white and green to black. There was so much violence and death at home and abroad. And Needles and I survived. And when the war to end all wars ended, there was still the violence at home. And Needles and I survived. And then we didn't. There was a global pandemic came on the back of the Great War, as if humanity hadn't suffered enough. The Spanish flu took my beautiful Needles and millions of others. And now it was my turn to wear black. I managed as best I could, but without Needles it was a real struggle. I brought in other tailors, but it wasn't the same. Customers wanted a Needles Nugent suit, and my beloved Needles was gone. I was that close to selling this place, and with it my right to vote, as it was part of my property qualifications. And then an unexpected opportunity came my way. The British government put a meandering border across the island of Ireland, and for the first time ever, goods were not able to move freely across the country. Suddenly we had border posts and excise men, and ordinary men and women who had never broken the law in their lives became smugglers. I found myself sewing hidden pockets into dresses and coats. My biggest sellers were extra large bloomers for transporting everything from tobacco to butter. People are very ingenious. A friend of mine lived right on the new border, and she would take orders for people from the other side, and they'd come and collect them when the excise men were gone. Most people think the border's an absolute nuisance. Nobody thinks it will last, so everyone's making hay while the sun shines. And I thought, well, why not? Most of my cloth comes from across the new border now, and I pay all my excise duty on it because we are a respectable, long-standing business with a very good name. My delivery drivers present all the correct papers and they're waved through customs. And let me tell you, there's an awful lot of things you can hide in a bolt of cloth. Non-governmental whisky, sugar and shoes are my main products, and the business is not only surviving but prospering. And it's all down to my beautiful Needles fiercely protecting our good name. As he used to say, if you get the name of an early riser, you can lie in bed all day. Well now, I'm expecting a new delivery of cloth very soon, so I'll be saying goodbye. Oh, and if you fancy a little nip of artisan whisky, you know where to find me.